Shabbat Shalom, 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 Umevorach, Shabbat Shalom, Umevorach. Join us. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is good to be with you in here. It is good to be with you out there in streaming land. It is good to be together making some of that Shabbat Shalom, some of that Shabbat peace that, I don't know about you, I feel like we and the world desperately need. So it is a blessing to be together. If you are joining us online, now is a wonderful time to introduce yourself, say Shabbat Shalom in the chat so we know who is with us. If you're joining us here in person, now is a great time to turn off whatever device might distract you to help yourself be present, and also to turn to someone near you and wish them a Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue with the lighting of the Shabbat candles, the blessings for which can be found on pages 3 and 2, and invite up Cindy Reiner, who has a birthday that she is celebrating very soon, to lead, but more on that later, to lead us in the lighting of the candles, page 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled life, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you. Happy birthday.
We continue with Lechado D, our blessing for welcoming Shabbat as if she were a bride, which begins on page 20. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, because those are my favorites. And when we get to that 9th verse, we're going to rise, we'll turn and face the back entrance, and that is the moment where Shabbat enters as a bride. Page 20, Lechado D.
Lechado di likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lechado di likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad yishmi'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad Kabbalat Shabbat lechu v'necha ki makor habracha Nurshirish mikerem hanesucha Sof maaseh b'machashavat tchila Lecha dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Hitorari Kiva orech kumi uri shir daberi Kivod Adonai alayich igla Lecha dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam b'simcha ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה לך דודי הן רק קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה
We remain standing for Baruch Hu, which can be found on page 28. I had the pleasure and honor of going this week to the conference of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, which is the Reform Rabbis Union. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later this evening, but part of one of the most wonderful moments was an interview with the oldest Reform rabbi in America. Rabbi Ed Zarin is 102 years old. He didn't make it to the actual conference, but they Zoomed him in. And he was offering some of his wisdom. And the thing he said that stuck with me was he said, they were asking him sort of what had he learned that had kept him so alive and so vibrant through his life. And he said, when I was in college, I heard about this guy named Charles Darwin. And he had said that everything evolves, and I thought to myself, if everything in this world grows and changes, then I'm going to have to grow too. Which I thought was a wonderful lesson, and a wonderful lesson for us to hold on to as we prepare for Ma'ariv Aravim, our blessing for the changing of day into evening and our blessing for nature, is that it is a reminder that we can learn lessons from the universe that can shape our lives. So if you'll join me at the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and seasons glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amecha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Akein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu, uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha, v'nizmach b'divrei toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negei yomam v'layla, negei yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem kevod malchuto le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated. Ve'ahavta, page 36.
Ve'ahavta
et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Today marks Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the celebration of the new month, the Hebrew month of Nisan, which is the month that contains Passover. So if you needed a reminder that Passover is in 2 weeks, this is your reminder. If you're your rabbi, you're very stressed out by that sentence, but it's okay. And with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we enter into this season of freedom, this season of awareness of the freedoms we have and the freedoms we still fight for in this world. The motivating commandment of the Passover Seder is B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirod et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. Every generation is supposed to see themselves as if they went out of Egypt. And our work, our challenge over these next weeks that bring us to Passover and through Passover is to try and find our own way into the story so that it's not just a story about people who lived a long time ago, but it's a story that's happening constantly in our lives. Page 39 helps us to do that. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Micha Mocha, page 40. Our ancestors composed the prayer on page 42, Hashkivenu, specifically because they were afraid of the dark. They didn't know what happened when they closed their eyes at night, and it seemed scary. And so they wrote a prayer of protection for their souls in the darkness. I don't know about you, but a prayer that is about protection of souls in the darkness feels particularly pertinent at this moment. There is so much darkness in our world. Thinking, of course, of the events that continue to unfold in Ukraine, of all of the innocent people whose lives are threatened, and also thinking of the 5 separate terror attacks in Israel this week that took the lives of 11 people, including 2 Ukrainian refugees. Thinking about all of the people around the world whose lives are uncertain, who are scared of the darkness they see in front of them. And for those people, we pray that God will spread over them and us a sukkot shlomecha, a shelter of God's peace, that will hold them until the morning, until brightness comes. Hashkivenu is on page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim may you shelter us in peace until the morning comes. May you lay us down with love, and may you raise us up. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim.
The Amidah begins on page 46. We invite you please to rise as you are able.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shmo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atara V'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mido Melach, Melech Memit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atah Lehachayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei HaKol. Atah Kadosh v'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kedoshim b'chol yom Yehalelucha Selah. Baruch atah Adonai,
Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Page 57. We pray together in the middle of the page. You are with us in our prayer, our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadcha b'yirah na'avot. There's this idea that on Shabbat we don't ask God for things, except that we still include prayers for peace in our Amidah, because we never skip a day to ask God for peace. Shalom Rav is found on page 60.
Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon, lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, O Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
We take a few moments now for silent prayer and gratitude.
Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'immeru amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'immeru amen. Huya say shalom, aleinu say shalom, shalom imramav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael amen.
We turn our prayerful energy to those in our lives and in our world who are in need of healing and wholeness, who are in need of a refuah shlema, a return to wholeness. We think not only of the people whose pains we see and know, but those whose pains we can never see and never know. Those who struggle with chronic illness and chronic pain, those who struggle with addiction and those who are in recovery, those who struggle with COVID-19 and those who care for them. In our community, we're thinking of Sarah Astrich, Sophia Barrera, Marcia Block, Bradley Borden, Ethan Boriak, Ed Brook, Terry Brook, Melba Berman, Richard Dana, Vivian Eberhard, Todd Franks, Marcinus Goldman, Deborah Goodwin, Chuck Green, Marjorie Hantman, Cam Hunter, Richard Jackson, Sarah James, Matthew Kardish, Lawrence Levy, Bev Saltzman Lewin, Christine Marcus, Kathy Mills, Todd Nelkin, Leatrice Rabela, Hattie Reese, Neil Reisman, Katie Jones Savrick, Edward Simmons, Leslie Simmons, Marcia Tushita, Marcia Weinstein, Alexander Zazovsky, Yvonne Zients, Ariella Sharon Bat Yafa Shoshana, Daniel Zev Ben Zaharia HaKohen V'Miriam, Gelka Nechama Bat Leba Chaya, Yehoshua Matikahu Ben Yaakov V'Purei V'Chana, Zahava Bat Miriam V'Shnir Zalman, and all who are suffering with afflictions of mind, body, and spirit, and those struggling with COVID-19. We offer these words of healing and hope on page 253.
Mi shebeirach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say amen.
Couple of blessings for this Shabbat. It's a joy to do blessings, and one of the joys of being in this COVID, post-COVID, whatever it is moment, and having improved our live streaming capabilities is every once in a while we have someone who deserves and needs a blessing who is not able to be with us in the room, but I know that Chuck Green is watching us online tonight, and I know that he is celebrating his 70th birthday, and so we want to wish you, Chuck, a very happy birthday. I know that this past year, has been full of some challenges, and I hope that you know that we are all praying that this 71st year that you are about to enter is a year that is full of healing and strength and blessing and joy for you and your wife Pat together, who I know is a steadfast presence by your side. And when I was mentioning that I was blessing you tonight. I mentioned to a couple of people, and Rabbi Silk and some others, that I was blessing you, and their initial response, each one to a person, said, "Oh, what a sweet man." And so we want to honor on this birthday all the sweetness that you bring into this world, all the sweetness that you bring into the life of your family and to this congregation as we pray for a year of healing and hope and strength for you and everyone you love. And we say together the Shehachianu Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehachianu V'Kiyamanu V'Higianu Lazman Hazeh. Happy birthday. And now we do get to do one that's in the room. Cindy, I mentioned earlier that you have a birthday. If you will please rise. Am I allowed to say which birthday you are celebrating? I said for Chuck, but I didn't get to. I'm told that tomorrow is your 65th birthday, which is wonderful and beautiful. I know about you how important family is to you, especially that gentleman sitting next to you, but all of your family. I know how important Jewish life and this congregation are to you. I know how important your friends are to you. And so my blessing for you is that you continue to have all the things that are important to you in your life, that you continue to have family, that you continue to have love, that you continue to have meaning, and that you continue to have a community of friends who offer you strength and support from this birthday to the next. And so we say together, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehachianu V'Kiyamanu V'Higianu Lazman Hazeh. Happy birthday, Mazel Tov. Couple of announcements for this Shabbat. Our first Saturday's monthly Shmooze and Shmear will take place tomorrow after Shabbat services. The service is at 10:30, and then you can join us for that service in the chapel and then stick around to schmooze over some bagels with Shmear. No RSVP is necessary. They write this, so I have to say that as many times as possible. I know what you're doing. All right. We hope you will join us over Zoom as our Israel Lunch and Learn series continues with a special Sunday edition this coming Sunday, April 3rd at 12:30 p.m. with Leket Israel's Joseph Gittler. Leket Israel is the nation's food bank, and that should be very interesting. You can register online. We hope that you will join us for our second night Seder, Saturday, April 16th at 6 p.m. Registration cutoff is this coming Wednesday, April 6th, so please let us know so you can secure your spot at our community Seder. I do want to tell you about next Friday night because a million things are happening here and it's wonderful. We will have our Shabbat service at 6 p.m. as we do every week here in this room. And also at 8 p.m. we will have our next edition of our Warehouse Shabbat service. Warehouse Shabbat is a service for adults of all ages. It's sponsored by our young professionals, but it's really for everyone, an alternative service. This time we're doing it here at Temple, but outside in a tent. It's going to be intense. All right. Should be a lot of fun. So it's a slow burn. Should be a really rich and meaningful service with our band. So you can come, and the 6 o'clock service will be live streamed. The 8 p.m. Warehouse Shabbat service will not be live streamed. You can come to one, you can come to the other. You could do a double header and come to both. And I know we're going to have lots to celebrate that Shabbat as well. And so we hope you will join us for part or all of that. And lastly, we hope you'll join us for the congregation's annual meeting, Sunday, April 10th at 4 p.m., held via Zoom. And we ask you please to register in advance so that we can make quorum to discuss the important business of the synagogue. As I mentioned earlier, this week I had the honor of attending the annual gathering of the CCAR, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the organization for Reform Rabbis. Rabbi Hayon and I traveled to San Diego to spend the week with our colleagues, learning, praying, and doing a whole lot of schmoozing. If you're ever having trouble getting a group to be quiet, I want you just to think about how hard it must be to get a room full of 300 rabbis who haven't seen each other in 3 years to stop talking for a program. And I think you'll have a little compassion for yourself. This evening, I wanted to share with you 2 stories I heard in San Diego, which are still reverberating in my heart this Shabbat. These stories celebrate 2 auspicious milestones, 50 years and 100 years. First, 50 years. This spring marks the 50th anniversary of the ordination of Rabbi Sally Priesand, the first woman ordained as a rabbi by an American Jewish institution. Rabbi Priesand was in attendance at the conference, and we spent quite a bit of our week offering her a well-earned mazel tov. A highlight of the convening came on Monday morning during the beautiful service that our own Rabbi Hayon had been asked to lead. This is something that I know is a great honor, but to me it seems like a high-stress situation to lead a worship service for 300 of your colleagues. Rabbi Priesand was called for the Aliyah to the Torah along with the other Vatikot, or pioneers, the first generation of women ordained between 1972 and 1983. Many of these trailblazing women were present with us in the room, and even more joined by Zoom. I was moved to tears by the profound impact these women have had on the rabbis who came after them. Not just other women, but men and non-binary folks as well, for whom the rabbinate has been reshaped and made better. Excuse me. The next day, we had breakout sessions with some of the Vatikot. I got to be in a room with Rabbi Myra Soifer, who was ordained in 1978. She told our group about many proud moments in her long career as a rabbi. But she also told us challenging stories that reminded me just what it means to be a trailblazer. She remembered a student pulpit, which for the most part had been great. On her last visit of the year, the president and vice president of the congregation came to talk with her about the next academic year. Rabbi Soifer remembered being confident that she would get to return, remarking to us that unless you committed some kind of federal crime, students were usually invited back. The board members spent a few minutes telling her how much everybody had enjoyed having her, but then they made it clear that the congregation had decided not to have her back, preferring to have a male student instead. This was not the only time that Rabbi Soifer had been made to feel unwelcome. Even her classmates spent the first half of their first year teasing her and making it clear she didn't belong. She was the only woman on campus at the time, but when she made it clear she knew where she belonged and it was right where she was, she remembered that by Purim, the males in her class had come to accept her and even felt somewhat protective of her. But it took that long just to earn their reluctant tolerance. By the time of the student pulpit debacle, tolerance had grown into respect. Word of the congregation's rejection quickly spread amongst the other students. That next Monday was sign-up day for pulpit placements for the following year. And of course, the congregation was now in need of a student. Not a single one of Rabbi Soifer's classmates signed up for the position. She protested, saying, I don't want to punish them because of this. But one of her classmates responded, "It's not up to you. We think they're wrong, and we're just not going there." Though challenging moments in school and beyond did not stop that day, Rabbi Soifer said that even all these years later, she remembers that she understood she was finally not alone. Rabbi Sally Priesand did not always enjoy being a trailblazer either. She famously said, "I didn't want to be the first woman rabbi, I just wanted to be a rabbi." But she was a trailblazer nonetheless. In my lifetime, women have always been rabbis. In fact, just a few months after I was born, my aunt was ordained at the same school where I later went. It's hard for me to remember that she was one of the first 75 women to be ordained a rabbi. Even she was a pioneer. Today, there have been more than 1,500 women ordained as rabbis in multiple movements. As more and more have entered our conference, women of all rabbinic generations have begun to share their stories of triumph, but also stories of hurt. They have shared stories of discrimination, sexism, and abuse that they have encountered in their rabbinic careers, not just in the distant past, but also in recent memory. Recent studies have shown that female rabbis are still paid less to this day than their male colleagues in similar jobs. Honoring the Vatikot at this convention was a reminder not just of how far we have come, but also how far we still have to go. Hearing these stories of challenge and discrimination calls me to remember just how straightforward my own path to the rabbinate has been. I was privileged to have an easy journey, not only because I am a cis white male, but also because Sally and Myra and the other Vatikot fought to make the rabbinate more inclusive, more accessible, and more diverse. Hearing of their hardships calls me to the continued work of equity and inclusion, not just in rabbinic spaces, but in all the places where people have fought to be the first of their kind in a space. And this is why I was honored to be a part of the celebrations of 50 years of women in the rabbinate. But I also want to talk about another anniversary, 100 years. As part of our celebration of Vatikot, we heard a presentation for one of my beloved teachers from rabbinical school, Rabbi Dr. Carol Balin. She shared the story of a historic vote in 1922 by the Central Conference of American Rabbis to ordain women, a full 50 years before Sally Priesand became a rabbi. At the time, there was another young trailblazer at Hebrew Union College. Her name was Martha Newmark, and she was just 17 years old. Like Sally, she had a dream to be a rabbi. And like Sally, she was not deterred by the prospect of being the first. She enrolled at HUC, where her father was a professor. Initially, even he was skeptical of her desire to be a rabbi, but he was soon won over by his daughter's commitment and brilliant mind, and many of the rest of the faculty were similarly impressed. But when the time came to assign her a student pulpit, the school realized it had to make a decision. Taking graduate courses was one thing, but if Martha Newmark started the practical rabbinical studies, they would eventually have to ordain her. So they did what any organization that has to make a difficult and far-reaching decision would do. They tried to kick it to someone else. They asked the CCAR what they wanted the college to do. And at their annual conference in June of 1992, 60 or so attendees debated the resolution. A beloved teacher of many of the attendees, Jacob Lauterbach, had written a responsa, a rabbinic guidance, that argued that men and women were just too different. He wrote that men counted on their wives to be, in the biblical term, a helpmate, and that a rabbi's wife in her homemaking exercised, quote, a wholesome influence on the congregation. He saw no way for these roles to be reversed, writing, the woman in a rabbinical office could not expect the man to whom she was married to be merely a helpmate to her. And even if she could find such a man willing to take a subordinate position in the family, the influence upon the families in the congregation would not be very wholesome. Not to mention, this is still quoting him, not to mention the fact that if she is to be a mother, she could not go on with her regular activities in the congregation, end quote. He concludes, and there is, to my mind, no injustice done to the woman by excluding her from this office. There are many avenues open to her if she chooses to do religious or educational work. I can see no reason why we should make this radical departure from traditional practice. The rabbis at the conference were divided. Many took the opposing side to their teacher. Passionate arguments were given. Remember, this is just 2 years after the ratification of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote, and many of these men prided themselves on their belief in the full equality of women and could see no reason why that should not apply to the rabbinate. At some point, someone suggested that the conference should hear from the wives who were in attendance. 3 spoke, all in favor. Mrs. Berkowitz said, I am more than satisfied to be the silent member of our partnership, but I believe that it is the function of women to give spiritual value to the world, and especially the Jewish woman, imbued with the Jewish spirit, will naturally bring a certain quality to the ministry which some of our men lack. I think that she said this in front of her husband and his coworkers. It's amazing. I think that might be enlarged and strengthened, and therefore should like to see our women become rabbis if they wish to do so. Ultimately, the conference voted 56-11 to allow women, writing in the minutes, women cannot justly be denied the privilege of ordination as rabbis. But the board of governors of the college turned out to be much more conservative than the rabbis who were in the field. They voted to deny Martha Newmark's request for a pulpit and blocked her from ordination. After 7.5 years in a 9-year program, Martha dropped out of the college. But she never gave up completely on her dream. 50 years later, when Sally Priesand reached that landmark milestone, Martha, then 68, wrote her a note of congratulations. Hearing Martha's story reminds me just how far we have come, but also just how slow progress can be. I tend to think of progress as a straight line, a ceaseless journey towards something better, but that's not how progress usually works. Progress is fits and starts. It's one leap forward and many steps back. It's a visionary vote that gets overturned by a small group whose eyes are trained on the past. It's pioneering into a space only to have everyone around you say that you don't belong. And progress is the friends and allies you make along the way who help you in moments of depression and defeat. Watching the Vatikot ascend to the Bima to bless the Torah this past week and learning about the dream of Martha Newmark that laid the foundation on which that Bima was built, I was reminded of the mantra that calls me to this work. The words of Rabbi Tarfon from Pirkei Avot, "You are not required to complete the work, but nor are you free to desist from it." We, you and me together, we have work to do to make this rabbinate and this world a more diverse and equitable place. And there is great joy in doing that work together. Shabbat Shalom. We continue now with Aleinu L'Shabeach, which can be found at the bottom of page 282. We invite you please to rise.
Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon HaKol, Latet Gedula Liotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kiguyei Haratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishpechot Ha'adama, Shelo Sam Chalkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 287. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. We take a few moments now for silent memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. On this Shabbat, our hearts go out in sympathy to the families of Michael Maltz and Roger Williams, who were laid to rest in recent days. We also recall the yard sites, the anniversaries of the death of Bob Abramson, Beatty Sheps Avedon, Norman Isidore Bass, Melvin Bauer, Lucille Lyons Beck, Mark David Black, Ethel Blumenrich, William Borden, Morris Breyer, Edward J. Bucksbaum, Leon Cohen, Charles Cohen, Hannah Gore Cohen, Emmanuel Cohen, Marcia Colton, Alan Curl, Barnice DeWitowicz, Dorothy Drucker, Thomas Dula, Claire Engelhart, Lillian Garber, Josh Gardner, Sam Gardner, Norma Adelson Gibbs, David Goldenberg, David A. Green, Earl Leonard Herring, Isidore Butch Hoffer, Eli Hoffman, Louis Kaiser, Evelyn R. Camion, Elaine Leah Kaplan, David S. Kaplan, Aileen Finger Coast, Abraham Krakauer, Virginia Tay Langham, Herta Laufer, Elliot H. Levin, Elliot Levin, Johnny Kuttner Levy, Herman Liu, Roselle Dolly Lip, May Lohman, Siegfried Lowenstein, Jim Lynch, Harriet Mellon, Joe Mendelowitz, Ethel Mills, Barbara Pessenmoss, Jacob S. Oshman, Sadie N. Pesso, Gertrude Pulaski, Byron Rance, William Rao, Richard I. Reich, Lillian Reisman, Muriel Rifkin, Eddie Rose, Glenn Rounsfell, Leon G. Schwartz, Evelyn Siebel, William F. Siebel, Louis I. Septimus, Herman Shapiro, Ira B. Shepard, Alfred Shep, Edna Smith, Deanna Braitman Smith, Doris K. Solomon, Ida Mae Stapleton, Leon Tudson, Morris Unger, Nathan Ehrman, Reva Usher, Stanley Vogelfang, Janice Ware, Arnold Weiss, Rosella Werlin, Hannah Westheimer, Samuel Fox Westheimer, William Wolfe, and George Zellick Zeff. We rise together as one community and turn to page 294 for the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yirtei v'yamich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'galau v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam omer maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'ne'emata, damid ram me'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
We move now from Kaddish to Kiddush. You can be seated, which can be found on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzav ba'anu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon Inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Chaim. Gets him every time. Oh, no, it's double wrapped. Okay, here. Oh, it's a challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Our closing song can be found on page 353, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Shalom. Od Yavo Shalom. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Shalom. Sing with us. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Please rise for the benediction. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imutenu, our God, a God of our ancestors, we are grateful for all the vatikot, all the pioneers, and the vatikim, the pioneers that came before us and built a trail that we could march on, that paved a way forward, that remind us through their trials and tribulations, through their triumphs and accomplishments, that we too can build a better world for those who come after us, that we can pave new paths, that we can support others as they pave theirs, that we can be sources of light and strength in this darkening world. We thank you for the many blessings in our lives. And we say together, Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.